Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Toledo. First Monday of November. Election day tomorrow, don't forget that. We're going to get started, even though some of you are still getting plates, because I want to give our speaker, Sean, plenty of time. So welcome, Rotarians and guests. And I would like to invite Reg Jackson and R.C. Young, both past presidents, up to the podium to do the invocation and the pledge. And when you guys come on up, and when we do the pledge, remember, we do have Veterans Day next week, and we will not be here in between. So think about the words of the pledge while you're reciting it today.
Being a student of history, I thought I should look into what happened on this day. You're all well aware of the current pandemic. Some of you know the pandemic in 1918 and a Spanish influenza that killed 675 people. But I dare say that probably none of you are aware of the Turkey pandemic of 1924. It turns out that in 1924, that the scientists believed that the turkey population of the United States was infected with foot and mouth disease. And on this day, November 1, 1924, the households of America rejoiced when the turkeys were released from quarantine, just in time for Thanksgiving. As Chuck Mann would tell you, you can't make this stuff up. Let us pray. Lord, thank you for the food before us, the friends beside us, and the love between us. Amen.
Good morning. Good morning. I'd like to pledge our allegiance at this time. So I'll begin by saying I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Reg. Thanks, R.C. I would like to thank Donna Bogan and Hartman Bogan for being our November meeting sponsors. Donna, are you here? Don't know. Anyway, thanks to Donna. Does anyone have any guests with them today? I would like them to, if you'd come to the floor mic and introduce them. You can use this one if you have to. Or talk loud.
Brian Wadsworth. Brian is the new project manager for Dunbar. He will be primarily in northeastern Ohio.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Anyone in the chat, Matt? Okay, no more guests. I would like to make one announcement that we did. The board got together last week. One of our members proposed that we make an offer to some of the individuals that won the 20 Under 40 award. And so what we've done is the top 20 winners are all going to be invited to become members of Toledo Rotary. And that will be for the duration of this Rotary year. So we're hoping, we know they're going to be young, and so we're hoping very much that they become good standing members and good members of our club. Is there anyone in this room that was nominated? If they'd please stand. Thank you. I do want to read the names of the nominees. Danny Woodcock, and he actually became one of the 20 winners. Shireen Murad, Dennis Sawin, Erica Halada, Max Reddish, Sierra Hutton, Sarah Swisher, Kevin Carr, and Chad Rutkowski. Let's give them another hand. The new member orientation that we had scheduled for this coming Thursday, we have postponed that until a little bit later. So stay tuned. And next, I would like to get moving along, so that our speaker has some time. So Past President John Wasserman, please come and introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my honor, privilege to introduce our speaker. He's an expert on many things. He's from Southampton, England, currently resides in Cleveland, CEO of the company that you are going to hear a lot about, Satelytics. And interestingly enough, it has deep roots in Rotary. The original founder of the company was a gentleman, Dr. Vincent, who was our past district governor. He was a PhD geology teacher at Bowling Green, and when he was in the military, he was involved in remote sensing. And I had the pleasure of serving on the board for some time and as a secretary for the corporation's board. But they brought in Sean, who's just a top-notch, dynamic person of a cutting-edge company, and a lot of the goals of the company are certainly aligned with Rotary, what Rotary is trying to do for the environment and everything worldwide. So without further ado, Sean, I'd love to have you step up and give your presentation of this dynamic company, and you're going to find he's a very dynamic speaker. Sean?
Thanks, Jim. Well, I'm a little nervous. Mr. President, Rotarians, it's a great honor and a great pleasure to be with you. Probably a couple of things you'll notice about me. One is I am a little nervous, and two, I speak with a funny accent. I can only possibly apologize for one of those. I'll let you guess which they are. For the next 4.5 hours we're together, I thought that we would take a little spin on Satelytics. I do encourage you to fire as many questions whenever you feel the need, but I thought I'd start off with a little story. Sadly, I've lost both my parents now, but I moved to the United States in 1989, and I brought a company which I'd started with 4 other chaps to the United States. And during that period, I did a lot of traveling around the world, and Google Earth was born. And I would invariably call my parents, who my father was a mailman, never made more than $25,000 a year. My mum was a full-time mum. I'm the eldest of 6. She wanted 5 others for a better revision. Then they just got cable TV. So at a time when Google Earth was born, I would call my mum from these distant places, and her standard answer would be, "Oh, that sounds awfully nice, dear." She wouldn't have a clue where I was. And I said, "Mum, go outside, jump up and down a little bit so I can see you on Google Earth. Go on, go outside." And invariably I hear the door, she's outside. And I said, "No, you got to jump up and down. The satellite doesn't see quite as well as you think." Anyway, of course, I had to eventually tell her that's, I just did it for a giggle. Now, mothers have a great way of getting you back. I was born on September 9th, and on September 9th, she dutifully called my company, which was a company called Westbrook Technologies, based in Connecticut at the time. And she knew that I'd be in a meeting, and she got through to Janine. Everybody knew my mum, June, by name. And she said, "I know Sean's busy," she said, "but could you just leave him a message? Tell Mummy's little badger happy birthday, would you?" Now, if you can imagine, that went quicker around the company than any satellite data that we would ever capture. Funny how full circle comes round. Satelytics, best thing we ever did, we moved to Perrysburg. We're in the Benchmark restaurant building where we've got the entire 3rd floor right opposite the Hilton. Great place. People just love it from an employee perspective. Customers love it. Encourage you all to come and visit whenever you can. But back to the business of what we do. Satelytics is a very unique software company, very unique. We take satellite data. Well, we don't take satellite data. What happens is the sun shines on the Earth's surface or a body of water, and what reflects back in the infrared spectra, which the naked eye only sees red, green, blue, is the DNA of the target we're trying to hit. Think about that for a second. We're examining light waves, and a methane has a different light wave to an oak tree. An unhealthy oak tree has a different light wave to a healthy oak tree. And it's Satelytics' secret sauce, those clever folks that we have that can decipher that. And then we turn around, literally turn around and give those alerts. Because if you think about our customer base, Duke Energy, BP, Marathon, first customer today is starting in New Zealand, First Gas New Zealand. Their objective is to have as early a detection as possible to greenhouse gas emissions, problems in the right-of-way, trees that potentially fall on their lines, and that's what our business is. You know, it's the software as a service business, it's the subscription business, and all out of the birth of a smart doctor out of University of Michigan who then set up in Bowling Green. In fact, many of our young, talented people, and we want to say that and express that, we're trying to promote young people, young talents in the area, Northwest Ohio. That's why we want people to have families stay here and breed generations of the next software technologies. So Satelytics takes in data from satellites, and the reason I mention satellites because the data could come from a plane, a drone, a fixed camera, a stratospheric balloon. But remember I talked to you about turnaround time? Satellites are really the only way. So if we collect data today over Washington, D.C., because there's always a lot of hot gas coming out of there, within 3 hours you're looking at the alerts and alarms, the results of what you've set as thresholds. This year, our biggest customer will be Duke Energy. They're about to release a video that features the CEO of Duke, the president, Microsoft and Accenture, all talking about their net zero drive, and at the heart of that is Satelytics. And they talk about Satelytics, they show Satelytics. So what's the difference between what we do? Well, we use some funny words, gobbledygook. We use words like neural networks, convolutional neural networks. We use words like artificial intelligence. And the key to it is that the more data you consume, the smarter and smarter the software becomes. Now, what I'm illustrating for you here on the screen, if you look to your far left, is the granularity with which Satelytics sets itself aside from the rest. Because not only do we identify methane, a hot topic right now, if you had the auspicious interest even to get up this morning and listen to some of the stuff going on in Glasgow in Scotland, where they're talking about climate emissions, methane is one of two factors that we measure, methane and also CO2. Not only do we identify it, but we also measure it down to parts per million, and also the flow rate of what's coming out of the ground. Last week, we gave Duke Energy 196 alerts, 193 right on the money. That's some going for a little company in Perrysburg. And if you look from left to right, the difference is Satelytics uses very high granularity, high resolution. Every dot on the screen represents 3.7 by 3.7 meters on the physical ground. There's a bunch of NGOs running around touting that they're going to bully everybody into compliance. They're using the far left, where they're using 100 meters by 100 meters for every dot on the screen. That's like saying in Florida, there's a mouse, somewhere find it. We always, and our customers like the fact that we get right down to the granularity. So we're looking at spectral signatures. We have over 40 different algorithms. How did we start life? We looked at algae blooms on Lake Erie. We looked at phosphorus, phycosan, and chlorophyll A, all of which not only do we identify, but we measure in parts per billion. Now, the extraordinary piece about this is that this is all highly automated, because there are 30 people in Satelytics, and right now we're serving 75 customers, and some of the biggest customers in the world. This morning early, I was on the phone with the UAE, ADNOC, which is the largest oil and gas company there, they're potentially wishing to look at 68,000 square kilometers every week. Just to put that into perspective. Marathon Pipeline used to have 6,000 miles of right-of-way before they made all these acquisitions. Every time they captured that data, it was 92 terabytes of data. And if any of you are propeller heads, let's just say that's a lot of thumb drives. Over and over and over and over. Of course, we base on Amazon, so we have infinite computing power, infinite storage. But that's the type of mass data. Today, our software algorithms has looked at over 6,000 trillion pixels. 500 billion of them just looking at methane. And so as it gathers more and more data, it synthesizes and says, that pattern looks like methane. I've got methane, and raises its hand as an alert or an alarm. And of course, this is all fully automated. So literally from action to alert, we want it to be within 3 hours. My vision one day is on the back end of a satellite, you could actually process the data and push it down so that the only thing that you would be looking at are the results. It's an extraordinary field. I've owned 4 software companies along the way. This is the 4th I've started. And this is by far and away the most exciting I've ever been involved with. 2 reasons. One, the technology is right at the edge. Often we call it the leading edge. Most 24/7, it's the bleeding edge, because you're trying to get people over the line to say, yes, let's do it, let's try. But the level of engagement at the most senior organizations, never have I ever had the CEO of Duke Energy call me on a Saturday morning and say, Sean, could you spend a couple of hours with me? I really like this. I want to be in to looking at how Satelytics is being used across our organization. Pretty extraordinary. 3 form factors, smartphone, tablet, or browser, use them all. Doesn't really care to me. We want to make it easy for you to work with us. That's our goal. And where does it go? Well, it's extensive. If you look at the money that's being spent above the Earth's surface today, it's pretty extraordinary. Billions and billions and billions of dollars of new technology and satellite. Now, I don't want to own a satellite, because that's the hardware gain that my checkbook just can't afford. I just want to be a consumer of the data and to help customer A and customer B drive tremendous efficiencies. You know, they say there are 3 things you should never do in life. One is work with animals live. The second is children. The third, which you're about to embark on, is the CEO and software live. But, you know, boring PowerPoint in the day in which we operate with Zoom is just that, very boring. So what I thought I would do is show you some examples, some that would just sort of shock you, perhaps, things that you wouldn't have thought of. Just move this out of the way a little bit so I can see. So, what you're looking at on the screen is Satelytics software. So here are some alerts and alarms. This happens to be from Brazil. We could look at the map view where we can see the area we've analyzed, as well as looking at the alerts and alarms. Very straightforward. This is Brazil. This is just outside Rio de Janeiro. Anybody know what illegal hot tapping is? Other than Bob, who's on our board of directors, who's heard a few times. Anybody? Take a shot at it. Go on, sir.
Going into a pipeline.
Yeah. Go on.
Tapping the oil or...
Yeah, right. And it's illegal because it's the drug cartels that are stealing it for oil and gas production. Well done, sir. Give me your address, you get a Satelytics umbrella. You too can be Mary Poppins at the next Easter parade. So literally then, if we look at this area or we zoom into this alert, who'd have ever thought that what you're seeing on the screen, literally the science finds the problem, here's the alert in red, here's the pipeline, you can see the vegetation's been cleared, you can even see the drug cartels literally in the site, and if I give you the side-by-side view, you can see the before and after. Now remember, the picture may not be clear to you, that's irrelevant. The science has found the challenge. Last year alone, Pemex, the National Petroleum Corporation of Mexico, 46,000 cases, illegal hot tapping. The most bravo of what you might have seen was CNN carried an aftermath. Maybe it's the only time I've watched that channel, but they saw there was some people illegally hot tapping, smoking in the area, gasoline line, 100 people dead because of the explosion. This is a regular occurrence in areas that you may not have considered. Latin America, maybe you'd say, yeah, I get that. Sub-Saharan Africa, yeah, I get that. The Pacific Rim, another hot spot for illegal hot tapping. And Italy. So let's go further forward a little bit. Let's come to the methane piece, because that's always kind of fun. The boardrooms are alive with about greenhouse gas reduction, net zero. If I hear that word one more time, I think I'm going to, it's like easy to use, real time, just in time. What does net zero mean? Well, BP is one of our largest customers. This year it will not finish up to be our largest customer. Duke Energy will be. But BP is a massive fan of Satelytics. In fact, became an investor last year with a small shareholding because of what we do and the range of what we do, I think, and our advancement on methane. So this is a typical oil and gas field. You can move this around. You can zoom into the area. There are two aspects of what we look at. The first is we look at the gas plume, which you see right here. And we measure that in parts per million. You don't need to worry about measuring it. You can click on any of one of those little pixels, which is 3.7 by 3.7 meters, and you can get the value. Or, indeed, we measure the flow rate. We see down to a low of 1 kilogram an hour. We take into account the wind velocity, wind direction, and relative humidity, all three major factors on what those numbers become. We've also got the ability to have a dual maps open and they synchronize. You will buy. Or indeed you can unsynchronize them and you can look at a different area on a different date if you wish, and you can zoom into you can look at a different date. Told you never worked with software and CEO Live. There we go. And you can zoom into this particular area, pick out the analyses and also look at the flow rate. Any of that data can be fed out into reporting Excel. And of course, today, what's the big area is ESG. Most people, when they talk about ESG, the basis on which they roll up the data, that's the carbon footprint, effectively, that your corporation is assigning as a financial figure that you create. However, most of those are based on modeling. Duke now uses Satelytics and BP for the real data and rolls it up to say, what are the initiatives that we've put in for greenhouse reduction been like? So let's take a look at Duke, just to show you that it's not in just a setting that is in the Middle East. Here's Duke. This is the North Carolina area, which is their headquarters. Here you can see the plume of gas. The purple is their pipeline. You can pick out any of the value sets, or indeed you can look at the flow rate. 193 out of 196 alerts, right on the money. Duke's words, Satelytics is almost 100%. We're abandoning driving cars around with sensors on the ground. Remember, you don't need permission. Perhaps you do if you're looking over North Korea or Iran, but our hot customers there, they've decided not to spend any money this year, and so we're focused on those that, as my mum once said to me, anybody can be my friend, only rich people buy from me. And you can see from that particular perspective where we go with this. She also said, Sir Showman, I should have been on the stage, one with a trap door and a noose around my neck. But that's a whole different story. And what you're looking at on the screen, which I will finish with, and then I'll throw it open to questions and answers for you, is this is looking at the carbon offset, the other side of the equation, which even if you are the most efficient organization, my contention is you'll never have zero greenhouse gas emissions, ever. Not unless we're all going to nuclear, which of course everybody's poo-pooed forever, right? I mean, that's only the French. I can't believe that an Englishman's saying that about the French. You know, the Channel Tunnel was so delayed because we gave them the wrong coordinates, the English. It was 10 years late because they were halfway across the Atlantic, still boring, going, I thought this was just 13 miles. We just added a couple of zeros. So what you're looking at here is you're looking at the tree speciation as captured from Satelytics. So this shows you all the tree species. Now, if you want to literally look at the carbon footprint, what you're looking at here now is a grid that is overlaid on top of it. Each one of these squares is 16 meters by 16 meters. I'm not sure the reason for that, but this is part of the carbon calculation. Now, click on any one of these, and Satelytics gives you every tree speciation, every height, every health within that square, anywhere on this particular grid. So companies like PG&E are experimenting with us to see if there's strike threat potential for wildfires. We look at the after effects of wildfires with burn scar analysis. Literally 40 plus algorithms that can all run at the same time. I came to America in 1989 and my dad said, God bless him, you'll never ever want to come back. What I never thought that would be the case is that in Northwest Ohio, there are many disbelievers because they think there's only the East and the West Coast and there's all sorts of silly money being thrown at people. But people are always gobsmacked, to use an English word, when they come to Perrysburg and they see Satelytics and just how brilliant, and I take all the glory and do none of the work, that the youngsters that we have in our team are. And so my advice to you is to encourage those youngsters, if they're looking for jobs in an interesting place, promote them to stay in Northwest Ohio, because youngsters have children and families, and that's how we really promote the next Rotarians, which of course I think with your statement about the 20 under 40 is very apt. But I greatly thank you for your patience and for putting up with the silly jokes. There are many others if you wish. But I'd be very delighted to take any questions. And if you're in the Perrysburg area, we're the 3rd floor, please pay absolute, come on in, let's go for lunch, meet the crowd. You'll really enjoy it. You could even meet Chalky. He's a golden retriever. He'll wander around the office and come up and say hello too, and he is open to the odd snack or two, not unlike its owner. So thank you very much for your time and attention. I'd be delighted to take any questions. Have, sir.
So it seems increasingly appropriate I came dressed as Ted Lasso today for your
Yeah, you look
speech.
fantastic.
Well, that's debatable.
Okay.
But maybe it's just to quote the great Ted Lasso, I think, you could fill 2 whole internets with what I have no idea about what you just talked about.
Me too.
Perfect. But if I understood it maybe about this much, does this mean that you might be the guy that can tell us what's wrong or where the problem is with our Great Lakes?
Yeah, first of all, it's a very serious question. This year, I'll answer the question. This year, South Florida Water Management District, which serves water to 15 million people, will have spent just over $500,000 with Satelytics. So enamored with it that they want to now take it across the entire state of Florida. And that's looking at nitrogen, phosphate, it's looking at phosphorus, it's looking at red tide, it's looking at pH values, a whole host of algorithms that we offer. When I first came here, sir, the first thing I did was try to embrace and engage the local Great Lakes. They know about us. We offered to do it for free, and there's zero response. So, why beat a dead horse? I mean, it's just not going to work. So the disappointment is we are a great answer to some of the problems on the lakes, if not just showing you where the problems are, managing how effective your solutions are and where they need to be focused. And sadly, no response. Great question. Yes, sir.
So what you're saying is Big Brother is really watching us now.
Yeah, well, interesting question, good question. Satelytics made a conscious decision. I said I never wanted the oil and gas companies or the companies which today we operate in oil and gas, power, pipeline, mining, specialty chemicals. We're just adding rail. I never wanted an executive to have to sleep with one eye open. So I don't want to do any business for the government. Now, if the customers share with the government, that's okay. I just don't want to make that decision because I don't want them to worry that Big Brother's looking.
And secondly, you mentioned the brain drain of young people leaving Northwest Ohio. What is your group or your young professionals,
Yeah.
what's their degree in? It's a software
Yeah.
engineering, is it computer
No.
engineering, or what's it in?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I asked the question before. The actual science of remote sensing, which means using light reflectance, because light is the fastest traveling media, to tell you what's on the ground in front of you or on the body of water, that's the science, is found in the geology discipline, typically. So, but as a company, of course, we have geologists who are scientists, we have computing specialists, we have artificial intelligence scientists. So we're looking for an array. We just hired a young lady who's joining us December 1st in accounting. So we have a need across the board because good people make great things happen. Just to listen to some of the talent that we have is extraordinary. I have my colleague Jay Armley, who's our director of marketing, in front of me. Jay was a customer. Jay ran a consortium in North Dakota called iPipe, made up of 13 different companies like Enbridge, Hess, Goodnight, Marathon, One Oak. And we literally collected data every week and returned alerts and alarms. Jay looked at 300-400 different technologies, and he said, I'm going to move my family from North Dakota to Perrysburg because I want a piece of this. So it's that type of encouragement we want because, well, I don't want to get into sort of my belief in it, but we can't wait for the steel company to return. What we need are young, vibrant communities and technology, as you already see before your very eyes and in some of your 401k plans. There's some brilliant minds that need untapping in this country. Yes, sir. Bob, how are you, sir?
So,
softball, Bob. Remember softball?
I promise.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to piggyback off what was asked just before. So I thought you might like to talk a little bit about where you get that talent. What are you looking outside of the area?
Yeah.
Are they,
Yeah.
as well as inside the area? And where do you get them?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Bob. I'll give you the $100 in a few seconds.
Was that softball enough?
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Bob actually is one of our shareholders, early believer in what we do, and we're really grateful for him, as well as John Wasserman, real believers in what we do. So we offered 3 jobs last week, 2 from Michigan, 1 locally. The 3 hires before that, a young woman from Boston University, master's in geology, a young woman from Georgia, Georgia Tech, master's in geology, and then a young man who was an AI Carnegie Mellon master's graduate in artificial intelligence, so computing science effectively. We want people from wherever, period. We just want good talent. I'm not a major believer in work from home, just not. I think people being together, especially innovative and real creative companies, you do better together. And of course, where we are, we got so lucky. A financial services company moved out of where we are, and the Californian company that bought the assets, you know, they're in $40 a square foot, and I started at $6, and we ended up at 11. So we absolutely love the area that we are in, and that's another good reason. A lot of our youngsters live next door in the condominium, so they don't even own cars, they walk to work. So lots of great things about the area. We just got to get them here so that they say, yes, this looks good. Miss.
Hi. So so do you lease your satellites like Iridium does and so forth and so on? Okay. And then my second question is, so I've been involved in wilderness search and rescue, and we've lost and have not been able to find some people. So with your geologic expertise, methane, carbon, et cetera, can you get to the point where you could aid in a search and rescue situation and help find either a living or a decaying body in the wilderness?
So the 2 questions you asked, let me start with the first one. We don't own a satellite, we don't own a drone, a plane, or a fixed wing camera. We contract with companies like Airbus, Maxar, TripleSat, Satellogic. These are large, giant corporations that dominate above the Earth's surface. And what we do is we task satellites. That means we point them over a certain area on a certain frequency. To your second point, I am sure at some point we could turn to that. I'm not sure that the people responsible would make the decisions would pay for that sort of data frequency. The data is our biggest cost. If you notice the industries that we chase today, they are the biggest industries with widespread infrastructure, because it's very challenging for them to visit their infrastructure for illegal hot tapping, to understand the greenhouse gas footprint, to understand that that sugar pine is of a mature height and it's stressed, it could potentially fall. So it's sort of a twist to where we are, miss. I'm not sure that we would actually, not sure, maybe one day. I mean,
Yeah, the closest is infrared right now, so.
well, we use infrared, of course.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. Yes, miss.
Miss, did you hear that? Miss.
Yes. Yes. Look,
Enjoying-
by the way, fantastic. Love the scarf. Softball question, please. Softball question. I'm on the downslope of the distribution curve. I can only take softball questions. Does anybody have do you have my cards? Are you with the AP, miss, or could you give a list of, I'm only allowed to take questions from certain.
Has anyone ever asked you to become a Rotarian?
Yes. They want me to turn around and leave.
No. Well, we're enjoying your presentation greatly.
Thank you.
And obviously, you're a visionary. Let's pretend it's 15 years from today. What's in that pretty little head of yours of what the
Wow.
future holds with your company?
Wow. First of all, great question. 15 years from now, I'll probably be dead because of all the travel I do. But on a very serious note, what I think is, from a visionary perspective, there are two things that I think need to go in our favor. I think the promise of lots of data availability above the Earth's surface needs to happen. You're seeing that, but to get a ride into space right now is about a 3-year waiting list, and is a $5 to $10 million ticket. That's why Elon Musk is doing extremely well with SpaceX. They project that it's only 17% of his wealth that it generates, and it's got a long way to go. So a ride into space is challenging. Let's say that we get over that. What you're going to see is this data come down dramatically. In the last 4 years, satellite data has dropped 26.4%, approximately, not to be too precise. And you will see availability where today you can revisit anywhere in the world 4 to 5 times a week. It will be minutes or seconds that you will see. There will also be an introduction in the stratosphere, 50 to 75,000 feet, stratospheric balloons. The good thing about them is that they can be brought down to Earth after 6 to 8 months, put back up with new telemetry. So to answer your question, what I see is that this will become ubiquitous. You will be looking for hundreds of things and get out ahead of them a long way. My vision is that on the back of a satellite or one of these other data platforms is probably a good statement or phrase to use, is that just the results will come to Earth. I would like to get as close, and I hate using the term, to real time as possible. I want to be able to determine the land movement before it becomes land movement. I want to be able to see the tree before it falls. And I think, we're all so quick to bash, but we handcuff executives and people in the field that can turn to action if they had good information on which to act. That's where I see this going. And I see it touching almost every industry. We're currently speaking with Duke, who say that they want to capture the whole of North Carolina and provide this as a service in partnership with Satelytics to the water company, the industrial complex, to the so on and so forth. We're scratching the surface of what's possible. And this is down to geniuses out of Bowling Green. I mean, a local university that had this type of vision. That's how profound this is.
Well, thank you. And
You're welcome.
we hope you're around in 15
Yeah.
years, like
Yeah.
all of us hope
Yeah.
we're around.
Couple questions.
Yes, sir.
You just said something about faults, so you think you would be able to predict an earthquake beforehand?
We would, I'm not sure that we predict the Earth. Well, ultimately, with artificial intelligence, I think prediction is there. But I think satellites will be a piece of that. What we can see are very small movements. So today we're using spatial resolution that is 30 centimeter by 30 centimeter. That means every pixel on the screen is represented by 1 foot by 1 foot, if you will. We've done some work with a stratospheric balloon. They're in their infancy, which is 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters. And while I talk, just to give you some idea, this is the Southern Company. Now we'll see if I know what I'm doing, right? Let's see him fail. Fail, you devil. So in this particular case, what the Southern Company are doing, just to sort of illustrate your question. So I'm looking for any vehicle that's in my right-of-way. And here you can see a whole bunch of vehicles come up. When I click on the map, this is 5 centimeter by 5 centimeter spatial resolution. And you can see we've got a vehicle that shouldn't be there. So when the weekend warriors go out and start digging their swimming pools, I'd like to get out ahead of that. So the finer the resolution, the earlier the detection. The earlier the detection, there are 3 things that we want to achieve. Minimize loss. If electricity spilling or if oil spilling, you're not selling it. Number 2, the cleanup costs escalate dramatically. And number 3, in today's world where big oil, gas, power, they're so heavily scrutinized, I'm sure the CEOs would love us to relieve a lot of that pressure. So the early detection would be possible, sir. Sorry, you had another question.
You talked a lot about trees. I want to exchange my umbrella for some information from you.
Yeah.
Since you
Can't
promised
trade
me
it,
to give
sir.
me that.
That's like Indian giving.
Yes. Can you predict that we have oak trees falling down in South Toledo all over the place? The roots are rotting.
Yeah.
Would you be able to see that and be able to show that, the potential of that falling?
Yeah, we do that. We do that with, actually do that in PG&E, where when trees get to a certain height of a certain species, they become a strike threat potential, given the wind, the direction, and velocity. So seeing a tree that's in decay is pretty straightforward. It gives off a different spectral signature. So the short answer is yes, we can tell an unhealthy oak tree from a healthy oak tree.
Are you doing any of that in Toledo?
No, we're not. I mean, I haven't had a call from, is it First Energy? But I'm willing to take that. So are you the CEO of First Energy?
No.
Because I was going to say, let's negotiate now. I'll give you 2 umbrellas if a heck of a deal.
I just had a tree fall down on my backyard onto my deck last year.
So it's no good me telling you a tree fell down on your backyard.
Right. No wind or anything. It just,
well,
but the roots were rotten.
right. Oh, that's true. Yeah. Very common. Very common. And often a lot of it is due to height, age, and health, and that can be determined.
Brad, they call that oak wilt.
Sir.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, this is fabulous information. Just
thanks.
unbelievable for most minds in here. What's the margin of error with this?
Oh, yeah. Great question.
With everything, there's margin of error. So just.
Yeah, great question. So every algorithm we run, so phosphorus, we measure phosphorus in parts per billion. We're accurate to plus or minus 6 parts per billion. With BP, our biggest customers, tested us in over 160 customers with methane. We are generally within the 6 to 8% range of accuracy of measuring. So every one of the 40 algorithms we have has an accuracy. And obviously, the more, this is why we use AI, it becomes smarter and smarter the more data it consumes. You're never going to get to 100%, but you know your incrementals will also see diminishing returns. But it's pretty staggering to think that 196 alerts, 193 were right on the money. Great question, though, sir. Great question. Thank you. I'm not sure if a board of director is allowed to ask a question, but go on, Bob. It's what day is it? Monday.
Let's see how entertaining we can make this.
Okay.
No, just a comment and a question. One, Sean's told you, I think this has been very impressive and very well done presentation. Satelytics really is a cutting edge company here. The companies that they do work with, from British Petroleum to Pacific Gas and Electric, the largest utility in California. They do business on 5 continents, I believe. Sean is much too humble to say this, and the company did have great roots here, started at Bowling Green, former Rotarians, past presidents running the company. Company went to a whole new level when Sean Donegan came to town. And we at the company are very glad that he's there, and I think the community should be glad that he's there. And he personally, much more than I'll ever go into detail here, is responsible for the company being where it is today. But it's also brought in great members in the rest of the team. Jay Amelie, who came down from the Balkan Fields up in North Dakota. Great graduates from Bowling Green, University of Toledo, University of Michigan. Other great schools around here have built out the company. They have received, I believe, the largest venture capital investment, certainly in the last 5 years, probably a decade or more, of a company here too. But Sean, briefly, if you want to tell about one or two more applications in either mining or ports or manufacturing that we haven't talked about. The applications, it's pretty astounding how many places this could be used.
So I spoke with some Russian brethren last week in Kazakhstan and Russia, and we are starting to be used. If anybody's aware, this is pretty unusual. The Catholic and Protestant churches, obviously very wealthy over the generations, they invest and have invested in lots of mining operations around the world, whether it's zinc, uranium, copper, gold, mine, doesn't really matter. And they've suddenly got a sense of responsibility, and they actually want their operations to be very sensitive to the environment in a number of ways. One, greenhouse gases, dust that gets accumulated. BP, when it bought Arco, bought a whole bunch of copper mines in Montana, and they were spending $30 million a year on cleanup, but they paid for everybody, all 10. And we were able to determine their copper dust from everybody else's because it had I don't want to get too boring here, but a moly component. And that took their bill from $30 million down to $4 million. We weren't on a revenue share. Sadly, otherwise I would have been retired. But I mean, that gives you some idea. And gold exploration, arsenic is one of the constituents we look for. You'll hear the word tailings dams mentioned a lot. That's the slurry and slag that comes from mining. You know, just covering that with vegetation stops dust. I was speaking to somebody in Namibia who said that, you know, in the old days they built the mine and they built the town adjacent to it, and dust as they move this stuff floats into the town, and people develop silicosis. Of course, way back when that wasn't even considered. So there's a lot of applications, and our goal is that if we develop an algorithm, we should be able to use it in market segment A, B, C, D, and E, because that's just a better return, and that's sort of our goal. So.
Sean, one application I think
Last question, John. Last question.
One application I thought it might be very interesting to share is the septic system project that you had. I think they might find that to be very interesting.
Yeah. We looked at a lake called Lake Choctaw, which is local, and there was lots of accusations that are always flashed around the farmers. It's the farmers, it's the farmers, it's the farmers. It was failed septic systems that was causing the phosphorus. And if you recall, on any of these sort of lake-based places, John's got his 30,000 square foot one there in Lake in Michigan. And, you know, in the day, they just had a pipe that ran out to the water invariably. And so you had a lot of, that was the way waste, sorry to be so crass, but, and so it's often getting to the sources that we're asked to do. So where did it start? Because getting out ahead of it, while instead of treating the result, is a whole lot better way. And the chap who asked the question about the Great Lakes, that's our point. We see these algae blooms very early in the River Raisin, the Detroit River, and the Maumee. We could get out ahead of it if truly people wanted to. Sir, very last question, sir. It's your lucky day.
Do I get an umbrella?
You can get an umbrella. You give me your address, I'll send you an umbrella.
That wasn't the question. So here's the real question.
Okay.
I don't think this was touched on, but what I'm
So
wondering
you really
is,
wanted two questions, sir, then? I'm not an attorney, although I've just been given, okay, I watch a lot of Law and Order. Keep going, sir.
I don't think this was touched on, but the concept of barriers to entry. I'm wondering about your competition. Some of your customers with deep pockets, what's to keep them from getting in, doing this themselves? You know, what kind of patents do you have out there? I'm really wondering about that.
Yeah. So, great question. Thought about it a lot. We decided not to go down the patent route because think about a patent. It gives you a vehicle to understand how we got there. So we are just running really fast. Is there barriers to entry? Yeah, there's a bunch of people in Perrysburg. If you could move them all, they would probably give you a good head start. There are people entering the market. We want competition. That means that this is for real if you have competitors. One of our competitors, a company called AI Dash, recently raised $26 million. They're based in San Francisco. $26 million. I bet they don't even do $4 million in revenue. So, and their specialty, vegetation management in utilities, just that. So we just got to keep running faster and keep being creative. And fortunately, I've got both on my side. Not that I run fast or the technology. Thank you very much, everybody. I'll leave this here. Yeah, I will.
Thanks so much, Sean. Fantastic information. As an engineer and a scientist, this stuff just fascinates me. It's really cool. Sean, I'd like to, as our thank you, give you a book called Historical Tales of Toledo, which should be nice for someone who's not from here. It's by a past president, Clint Mock, from Toledo Rotary. And we'd also like to make a donation to the Polio Plus Foundation in your name.
Thanks.
So, and Sean agreed to stay around till 7, 8 tonight or so to answer questions. And I would like to invite Chuck Mann to come up, and he's going to give us a little laugh. Oh, the pressure.
I got to write this script. Stick with the script. 2 satellites got married last week. The ceremony was nothing special, but the reception was amazing. I apologize to everyone. This it's the first Monday of the month, so it's time for a clip. This short clip is from one of my favorite movies, reminiscent of yesterday, last night, Young Frankenstein. Dr. Frankenstein, in this scene, Dr. Frankenstein, played by Gene Wilder, and Terry Garr as Inga, his faithful assistant, hear a faint sound of a violin being played in another room of the castle and are trying to find the source.
You were right. It's coming from behind this wall. Where is it? Where is it?
That!
There's always a device. If I can just spot the triggering mechanism. Hello? It seems louder over here. Hand me that candle, will you? Put the candle back. All right? I think I have it figured out now. Take out the candle, and I'll block the bookcase with my body.
Now listen to me very carefully. Don't put the candle back. With all of your might, shove against the other side of the bookcase. Is that perfectly clear?
I think so.
Good girl.
Put the candle back. Oh, look, Doctor. A passageway.
Whatever that music is, it's coming from down there.
Thank you so much. Always entertaining. Next week, November 8th, there will be no meeting in recognition of Veterans Day. I would like all of our veterans please to stand so we can recognize you. Thank you all. Appreciate your service. All right. I don't know if you liked the new room. It seems to work fine. Next meeting will be here at the Toledo Club on November 15th. Our speaker will be Anthony Washington, a former Toledo Rocket defensive back. I understand he was number 13, and he will tell us about some technology used to give back to the community. No committee meetings today, and we are adjourned.